This is episode 1 of Youthful Perspectives. I'm your host, Mason Beerbaum. My guest today is Cory Schlagel, a high school math teacher and one of the best basketball coaches I've had the pleasure to watch and be coached by. Known for his intensity on the sidelines, exceptionally high basketball IQ, and a winning mentality that has encompassed the entire boys basketball program at Albany High School. Our conversation centers primarily around the leadership philosophies and tactics Coach Schlegel has witnessed, developed, and implemented within the classroom and on the basketball court. Though some may find him intimidating and therefore scary, with his intense coaching voice and piercing eyes that feel as if he's looking through you and not at you. But I have always said that those who find him scary do not truly know the man, for he is the epitome of a team player and the embodiment of what a high school teacher and coach should be. One who will go to great lengths to better you as a student, player, and person. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation we shared together. And now, Coach Schlegel. All right, so we'll start here with the first question we have. A brief overview of an athletic career and how you became a coach and therefore a leader.
Overview of my athletic career. Played football, basketball, and baseball when I was growing up in the big town of Rush City, Minnesota, in the eastern part of Minnesota. Grew up in a family of coaches and educators. My dad was a teacher, Phy-Ed/history teacher, but also was a longtime AD back home in Rush City, Minnesota. So kind of grew up around sports, hung around him after school all the time. So I just kind of naturally had to be playing sports all the time because that's just kind of the way of life that we had. After high school, I went up to Hibbing Community College and played the lowest level of junior college basketball that there is at Hibbing Community College for 2 years, and then went to St. Thomas and was on the basketball team there for 2 years. I did not play a whole lot, but it was a really good experience for me because I knew I wanted to be a coach. So just continuing to be around the game for me at that point in my life was good because I just wanted to keep learning and being around the game. So that's the extent of my athletic career in terms of what I was playing throughout my childhood, I guess.
So you said you grew up in a family of coaches. Would you say that's the primary reason why you got into coaching, would you say? Because you were just brought up around that in a household that had a coach, and Thanksgiving, Christmas, you got multiple coaches at these family functions talking about coaching and the games that they coach and all that. Would you say that had an influence into making your decision?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad, at various points in his teaching career, even when he was AD, he coached football, he coached girls basketball, boys basketball at various times, and he was also head baseball coach for like 40 years. So it's just I was always around it. His two brothers, one of them taught and coached in North Branch, basketball, baseball, and then my other uncle was longtime assistant and then head men's basketball coach at St. Cloud State. So no matter what we were doing, it was always focused around sports. So it's really the only thing that I know. The calendar of living and teaching and coaching life is kind of embedded in my skull. So yeah, that was a huge influence on me because it was 24/7 what I was around.
So you mentioned your dad and your uncle being two coaches that you spent a lot of time around. Would you say they had a similar coaching style or philosophy, or is there some pretty distinct differences between them, and what were some lessons that you learned between those two when it came to coaching?
No, there's a lot of similarities there. I think the biggest thing that I learned from both of them is just to do your job and to do it right and to do it ethically and do things the right way. I don't think or in terms of the way they went about their business, they just did what they felt was right for their players, their kids, their students, whatever. without really caring about what anybody else thought or what anybody else said. They just always did the right thing. The other thing is they were both very humble. They weren't ever seeking attention or anything like that. They just were grinders. They just always put the work in, and were successful in what they did. So that's just kind of how I learned my philosophy as well.
I know. I remember one time when I was a senior on the basketball team, and you said, if we win a game, the players did everything right. If we lose a game, the coach did something wrong, or it's the coach's responsibility. And would you say that's something that you developed by being around your father and your uncle when it came to coaching? Is that something they kind of honed into you?
That's one of the biggest things that I've learned as an educator and as a coach is just to be organized and to kind of set things up as best you can to allow your students or players to be successful. And that's what my job and my role should be, as being the leader in my classroom or being the leader of the basketball program. It isn't necessarily my job to, what do I want to say, be the person that takes credit for things. I want to be the person that helps fix things more than anything, to allow people to be successful. And both my dad and my uncles, that's the way they did things. It wasn't ever about them. They all of them had a lot of success, and I witnessed that, but it's not like they were out there wanting attention for it. It was just do your job.
Do the little things right, and everything else falls into place, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you prepare yourself, then I'm okay living with whatever happens, whether, that's even as a teacher, I try to make sure that I put my students in a good place to be successful, and it's their responsibility sometimes to take how I've set things up to gain that success. And I feel the same way when I'm coaching basketball. If I put people in a good place and we've done the correct preparation through organization, then I'm okay if we lose, and hopefully we win more than we lose.
Exactly. That's the goal at the end of the day. Would you say it's hard for you being an educator as your primary role in the Albany High School? Is it hard during basketball season to keep that as the primary role and not have basketball consume majority of your time, or not necessarily time, but more of like your priority? I guess it'd probably be difficult, I would assume, especially when state tournament comes around and you got to take care of people in the classroom as your primary job, but also you want to prepare the team for ultimate success.
I think that's one thing I've gotten good at in my career is in the summer I actually try to do a lot of my teaching stuff where I'm actually preparing a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So whether it be lesson plans or assessments and things like that, I actually do a lot of that work in the summer so that when we're in the fire of being really busy and stuff, I actually already have things prepared. I don't sit and prepare things on a whim, teaching or coaching. I try to make sure I'm prepared in advance. Obviously, you got to make adjustments and adapt to daily things that come up, but I try to do long-range planning in anything that I do to lessen the strain and stress of having to create something and get things ready on a whim, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So preparation allows for flexibility, you would say.
Correct.
Well, that's good. The next question we got here is, you'd mentioned you played basketball in your youth or in your college years. So how important is it for a coach to have previously played the sport they're coaching? Or in other words, how important is it for an authority figure to have occupied his sport in its quote-unquote shoes?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think that just comes down to a case-by-case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's been professional coaches that have never played a prominent role in their college career or anything like that. You actually see a lot of people that cross over in terms of where they're coaching from maybe the sports that they played. I think it's more of a mindset and a mentality more than anything. Obviously, you need to know X's and O's of whatever sport that you're coaching, but I think it just comes down to actually, being able to learn and then being able to adapt to whatever your role is. Obviously, at the high school level, I don't think it necessarily matters, to be honest with you. There's so many different types of roles that people can play. And I'm not even talking just head coach. It could be an assistant coach. It could be a junior high coach. I think as long as you have work ethic and you're willing to learn and adapt to things, that you can be successful in the people that you're coaching.
I know right now I'm reading a book about Dwight Eisenhower, and he was always wanted to be a commander in the field of battle, but he always got put in the office. But over time, he became a 5-star general, the highest rank you can get in the United States military, and he never necessarily occupied his subordinate shoes of the people he was moving around, but he still was able to adapt to the situation at hand. So I would say that your idea kind of falls perfectly into what happened to him in that scenario, and all the other leaders that not necessarily were, playing basketball on the court or were on the field of battle, but they kind of knew how the system worked and how to pull certain levers to make sure there was, maximize their intended goals. But
yeah, I think you can take certain whatever circumstances you've been in your life, and you can apply it to something else. It's not always going to work for everybody to do that, but as long as you're taking any type of structure and organization that you've learned and apply it elsewhere, I think you can always translate it.
Mm-hmm. Next question I had here is, you teach the highest level math that the Albany High School provides. So, being a math teacher, what role does math play in basketball, and how do you incorporate that into your coaching style or philosophy?
I would say I actually structure my coaching style right after the way I do things in the classroom. Mathematics is a very linear subject in terms of you have to build upon things on a daily basis, and you got to kind of take steps each day to allow the next day to work and allow the next week to work and allow the next concept to work. So it's a very logical, sequential, academic subject, and there's not a lot of wiggle room in terms of what the plan is. And I think that translates to the way I coach basketball as well, because I think that coaching basketball at the high school level it's a step-by-step process as well. Every year we go back and we kind of start with the same base fundamentals, and we build things up with the same goal in mind of being able to play your best at the end of the year. And it's the same way in my classroom. When I first get students in their first college algebra class, right away things probably don't go very well. The rigor and the level of arithmetic and problem solving that they see is a little bit it's just at a higher level than they've seen in the regular high school classes, and it just incrementally over time becomes better, and you see students gain growth and how they attack those type of concepts and get better at dealing with how hard things are. Basketball to me follows the same pattern. You learn how to deal with stuff on a day-to-day basis and learn how to get better, and at the end of the year, we're usually right there ready to compete.
So it's basically, before you learn PEMDAS, you got to know what addition and subtraction, multiplication, division, all that stuff. Whereas in basketball, you got to learn how to dribble and shoot and pass before you incorporate plays or you're doing dunks and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's just a big step-by-step process that, again, just goes back to organizing it in a linear fashion to keep building upon things.
Absolutely. And the next question here might be a little harder question to answer maybe, but give it your best shot here. What was the lowest moment of your coaching career, and what was the highest moment, and what lessons did you take away from both those experiences?
Lowest point, I guess I lose track of my years, but one year we lost our first playoff game in the section tournament. We were a 5 seed and we lost a game to the 12 seed holding forward. We were heavily favored. Heavily favored in that particular game. I think we'd won earlier in the year by like 30. And it's like one of your biggest fears as a coach if you see that your players maybe don't necessarily have the correct mental approach. And that night, it was on our own floor. We just struggled mightily. Couldn't get anything going, and I felt helpless as a coach. Everything I was trying, nothing was working, and we lost. So in those instances, you just kind of remember that. You remember that feeling of feeling helpless. And everything I remember turning to Boone and Johnson multiple times in that game saying, guys, I need help. I'm trying everything that I usually try, and my tricks aren't working. And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders at me. It's just one of those nights. But you remember those things because that's where the process and of organization and preparing an entire season just becomes that much more detailed, in my opinion, because if you keep focusing on the details, then you get in those cases, you get in those instances, and as long as you're prepared, then I can live with not winning. But it's good to have those moments to be humble and understand that it's not always going to go your way.
Yeah, I remember that game. I think it was 2019, I want to say.
Yeah,
I think I was a freshman.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But yeah, I remember watching that, and I think they had some redhead on their team that was shooting the absolute lights out.
Oh, they were drilling shots all over the place. I mean, it's probably a case where we play 10 times, we win 9 times.
It was just that 10th time.
Yeah, and that stuff happens.
Mm-hmm. But again, like you said, a humbling experience for you as a coach, like you said, and obviously a tough pill to swallow. But in the long run, you think that did more good than harm, I would assume.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, you always have to have times where things don't go perfectly. I mean, that's kind of where you learn how you can go about things as a person, because not everything's going to go well in life, basketball, classroom, at home with your family. I mean, there's always things you got to work through and learn from. So that was one of those cases in my coaching career where you just don't take things for granted, and always just make sure. I keep saying it 100 times, but it's just you just have to prepare and live with consequences. But as long as you've gone about your business and preparing, then I'm okay with that.
And so you talked about the lowest moment of your career. Is there a certain high point that you reflect back on where you're like, this was me at my peak performance, or the team was at its peak performance, or the organization, the program was at its peak performance? It's
funny because I don't consider there to be one like high moment. I mean, I've been the head coach here for, what is it now, 12 years, 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the high point is the entire process. I mean, when we first took over the program, I mean, there had been success, up and down type success, but we had to teach people kind of how to play hard on a daily basis and what defense actually meant. And there's a lot of time and energy spent teaching people how to play hard, and that's probably the hardest thing to do. And now over time, that's just kind of become a staple. Back in 14-15, when we went to the state tournament, when we actually were up in the bigger class, in Class 3A,
mm-hmm.
I mean, that was kind of a defining moment to kind of show everybody that it is possible to win here and to compete at that level. And I think a lot of people at that point maybe became a little bit more interested in basketball, because I think ever since that point we've been very, very competitive at a high level. Because once you see it, the community believes that you can do good things. I think younger players kind of aspire to be in the environments that they have seen us in now for the last 10 years. So I don't think there's just one high point. I mean, obviously, every time you win a section title, or we were fortunate to win a state championship 2 seasons ago, obviously those are high points. But to me, the high point is the entire, I'll say it again, the entire process comes out in those things, because it took a while for me to go from coaching through just sheer trying to motivate people to play hard. Now that's an expectation. Now I can actually coach strategically. I get to think a lot more about strategy and how to get better at X's and O's rather than just flat out playing hard and buying in on the defensive end. So that's kind of the high point to me, is we just kind of brought the standard of the program up to a point where everybody just expects us, my players know the expectations of how to come about their business on a daily basis.
And would you say that's something that you were able to witness as a coach? Because you were an assistant coach at St. Cloud State, weren't you, for a few years? And was that something you saw there that you're like, this is how you create a winning environment in a program? Or is that something that you were able to develop on your own through trial and error?
No, I mean, I think I've witnessed that my entire life, growing up with my dad and watching my uncles. What you do on a daily basis matters. You just keep building on things over time, and usually the results then speak for themselves, rather than think you can just show up on one day and all of a sudden play hard. No, it's just kind of a learned thing that you have to go about over a long period of time to create that standard. So, yeah, I mean, when I was at St. Cloud State, you saw that. I mean, you see all the stuff behind the scenes that goes into things that the outside public doesn't see, and that's what I try to do in things that I put my hands on.
Would you say it's hard to, as a leader of the program, to, you want to talk the talk and walk the walk, and having a high standard? You also want to, demonstrate that through the way you, like you said, organize your practices or your scouting reports or the film you watch and all of that, or how you coach yourself in a game. Would you say there's a lot of added pressure when it comes to that, being the leader of the program and, setting an example for the players underneath you and coaches underneath you?
I would say over time it's changed. Now that I've done this for a while, I'm just very confident in how we go about our business. And it's not like we're trying to prove ourselves anymore, or it's more of we're trying to sustain it. And I believe, the way I run stuff in my classroom and the way I run the basketball program, we have enough people that are bought in, including my assistant coaches who have been with me every step of the way. We're just very consistent in what we do. So that standard of consistency is just kind of naturally been formed, and you just roll with it now.
It's almost a snowball effect in the sense of the winning mentality.
It is, and at the same time, each year we still adapt, right? In my teaching and in my coaching, there's still, every year I try to inject something new here, or you try to inject something new there. I'm still adapting. Today's athlete and today's student is way different than the student and athlete 10 years ago even. So, I was brought up in the old school ways, at the same time grew up now in the new school ways. So I try to blend some things there and try to adapt. But I still have a lot of old school thinking in me, but you have to continually try to change a little bit here and there to adapt to the clientele that you're dealing with.
Yeah, because I bet the game you played as a player back in, what years were your heyday, would you say?
Oh, 93 to 99.
93, 99. So basically when Jordan was running the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd say the game has evolved from there.
Oh, tremendously. No, I couldn't even. It's funny because all these guys that I'm coaching and stuff. They would have kicked my butt when I was playing in high school. There's no way I was as athletic or strong or whatever. But I think I'm smarter than all of them in terms of IQ, and I see the game differently than them. So that's what I try to teach them. I can't physically do what almost every one of my players can do. And I wasn't this super athlete. I was just, as a basketball player, I could shoot it, and I could come off screens, and I could read stuff. And that's what I try to do then when I'm coaching, is teach kids how to do that type of stuff.
So when it comes to basketball, is there a certain position, at least at the high school level, that you think not necessarily means that they're better than the other positions, but is most important to team success? Some people say it's the point guard, being the floor general, or having a dominant center in the paint to get rebounds and obstruct layups. At the high school level, is there a position that you find is more important than others?
I don't know. I've always struggled with that question because there's a certain style of play I like to have. I mean, I think every good team that we've had has had good post play. Especially at the high school level. I think that when you have guys that can be a physical force in the paint on both ends of the floor, guys that can play with their back to the basket, I think it just puts a lot of pressure on the defense at the high school level of how high school teams can defend. So I think we've been most successful when we have guys that can play with their back to the basket. But, I mean, at the same time, you need to have good guard play because when you get into playoff basketball, defenses are really good, so you have to have shot makers and playmakers and all that stuff. So realistically, I want to have 5 of the most skilled, multi-dimensional guys that you can have to be able to put pressure on people. So I do think one thing I've learned is the easiest teams to coach are when your best players are the ones that work the hardest and are coachable.
Yeah.
When I can coach my best players and they respond to it, then everybody else falls in line. When you try to coach your best players and they are when they try to resist it or think that they're going to run it the way they want to, then typically you're not going to get as good at team results. So, and that's not to say, people say, I think people look at that, or maybe will take that comment as me saying that I know more than somebody or that type of thing, but it's more of putting together an entire group so that they all think the same way. And when you're on the same wavelength in terms of thinking with your best players, then it all filters down pretty easily.
Yeah. That's an important thing, especially in a team sport. Have the team with a similar mentality. And I noticed that we're both wearing the bands that we got that state championship season when you have the Relentless 36 on it. I mean, would you want to talk more about how you came up with that term and what that term's supposed to mean and the importance of it to you?
Yeah, I don't even know how I came up with it. Obviously, teaching math, I think in math terms, but the high school basketball game is 36 minutes long, and some of the teams we've had lately, I've just felt as though, and I hate little sayings and words. I don't believe in that type of stuff, but I try to keep things as simple as possible. So that word relentless is just more of a goal. The 36 is because there's 36 minutes in a game, and anybody that knows mathematics and what an asymptote is, it's a number that you approach but don't ever actually get to. So that's where the Relentless 36 come about, and how I try to incorporate that is just trying to approach as best of 36 minutes as you can every time. Because if you do that, then you're probably going to have a pretty good product on the floor every night. So that's where that came about. I just wanted a reference point, especially for that crew that year, because I knew that we could get after it almost every night, every game, every second. I just knew that was the mentality. So just to have a one-word phrase, because like I said, I don't like using cliches and putting things on fronts of T-shirts and things like that. It's just not the way I like to go. But I just thought that group could use that term, and I used it a little bit last year, and we'll see if we use it in the future. But it's just more of a goal that you're shooting towards, and you're not always going to play perfect 36 minutes. Some nights it might be 30, some nights it might be 33, but some nights it might be only 15.
Mm-hmm.
But that state tournament team, we were approaching 36 minutes pretty consistently on a daily basis, and but that's just kind of my mentality, and is that you can always just keep getting better, right? That's the asymptote part, is you can keep getting closer and closer to 36. May never hit it, but you can always get a little bit better. And that's kind of how I coach. You know, some people think I'm grumpy and ornery, and I always think we can be better.
That's right.
No matter what the result was one day, or no matter how well my students did on one test, I always think I can maybe do a little bit better. So that's just always kind of been my mentality. So that was the thinking behind that phrase.
So you kind of alluded to this next question here and there. You've talked about being organized, group mentality, not being complacent in results, relentless 36. That's the way I kind of interpret it, is you don't want to be complacent. Yeah, you can play a great game on Tuesday, but when Thursday comes around, don't expect the same result. So the next question deals with what characteristics or traits separate a great team from a good team in your experience as a coach?
The little things, details. One thing that we've gotten good at in terms of basketball the last few years is being able to watch film and translate it to the floor, as well as put game plans in the classroom and translate it to the floor. That's one thing that's stood out over the last few years, is I've got guys that, especially on the defensive end, can take a plan off a whiteboard or off watching film and execute it. Now, we've had to practice things and do things in practice, the skill work. But typically in a high school season, I try to take the first month and really just hammer home defensive concepts and coverages and things like that. Because when you get into the season, you're playing a lot of games. You can't practice as hard. Like your senior year, we had weather issues like every other week. So you're not necessarily being able to refine those defensive frameworks. That's why I try to put that in the first month. And it's been really cool to see guys trust me in what I'm telling them defensively, and then to go on the floor and execute it. When you put into play those type of details, that's really cool to see. A lot of things in life can be accomplished if you just pay attention to details and trust following what you were trained to do in given situations. So from a coaching standpoint, I think that's been a huge thing for us the last few years, is the intelligence and IQ that we can take things from just discussions and put it into play on the floor.
And it kind of stems back to how the program's set up too, is if you get that honed in at the 7th or 8th grade level, that trust the process, don't be coachable, don't refuse certain things. If you get that instilled in, a middle schooler's mind, by the time they get to the varsity level, it's going to be a very seamless transition, I would assume. And that's probably something that you've incorporated either indirectly or directly over time. But I don't even know what the win-to-loss ratio has been over these last few years when it comes to from 7th grade to varsity level. I know it's been significantly more wins than losses, but I would assume that probably stems from how a program is structured and the importance of having these, little things incorporated at all levels. Because remember when you would always coach or we'd have the conjoined practices as freshmen. We'd warm up with the varsity guys, and you would always say how it's good to harp on these little things at the younger level, because when you get to the varsity level, you're going to have to rely on these exact same things, just at a higher pace and a more high-pressure situation. So if you get those honed in at that age, certainly is going to pay off. So,
yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of learning from watching and seeing and being around it. That's what I think's cool about the fact that we can, we practice 9 through 12 all the time, and we're always doing all the same breakdown and drill work. And, when we break away, Coach Johnson at the 9th grade level might work on different things team-wise, but it's still the same concepts, right? And we all go through the same skill work. And when the younger kids can see the older kids doing the exact same things that they are, it just, I think, creates a whole environment where everybody's going about the same process. And, yeah, like you said, we've had a lot of good results lately, and that makes it easier. When you're winning, it makes it easier for people to believe in kind of what's going on.
Would you say the weightlifting, when it comes to certain teams, has historically separated good teams from great teams, like teams that get after it in morning hits with Coach S up in the weight room tend to have more success, or those post-practice lifts too, if people are slacking off? Have you been able to witness the results of the lack of effort in the weight room and how that translates to the court, or has it not been as big of a deal as you thought it would be, or is it over time with different techniques in weightlifting and all of that?
No, I think there's a pretty direct correlation between our athletes getting to be better athletes to help all the sports that we're in. Coach Schwensfire does a fantastic job up in the weight room since he's taken over. I mean, Alex Yvonne, when he was here, did a great job up there as well. But at the same point, I think the weight room also has a level of creating leaders on the team. You kind of see the last few years, your senior year, you had that big group of people that went in the mornings. That's really the first time that's happened where that was kind of player-led. And it continued this year where there's people lifting 3 mornings a week. I mean, we would get home after a game on Tuesday nights, and some of you guys were in here on Wednesday mornings or Friday mornings after a Thursday game. That's just a mentality. And that wasn't me telling people they had to do that. That was just you guys doing it. So now when that starts to happen, when it's not just me always telling players what to do, and it's player driven, well, now you're golden. When you've got buy-in from players under player leadership, now it's gravy. I mean, It's not, because I can only do so much, right? I mean, I can go out and it's just like when I'm coaching in a year, I can throw a fit. If there's things happening that I want change, I can throw a fit. And the next time it happens, I can throw a fit. And the next time it happens, I can throw a fit. I can keep throwing fits, but sooner or later people will tune me out. So you have to pick your spots in terms of when you really need to throw a fit to make your point. Well, to me, it's the same with how you're preparing yourself as an athlete. I can only, in my opinion, tell you to do so much. If we want to continue to have growth, then you need to be able to hear it from other people. So it's great. Coach Schwensfire runs his weight room pretty much like I run my classroom or run my basketball program, but it's a different voice, and my players are seeing the exact same structure, just from a different person in a different environment. When my players can take the onus to be leaders and do the same thing, well, now you've got multi-layers of people leading within one big organization. And you said it earlier, there's a huge snowball effect with that. And most people on the outside can't see that, but when I'm around it and can witness it and not always be the voice, it's golden.
Absolutely. I know that's something you would always talk about in practice, where we'd be doing 36-second drill or something. It's like, yeah, you don't have to go 100% if you don't want to. That's your choice. If you're feeling tired today, don't go 100%, but don't expect that lack of effort to get rewarded in playing time. So it's like you said, you can only do so much, but at the end of the day, the player's got to take responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, so individuals have a choice in certain things. So, I call myself a coach, I call myself a teacher, but a lot of times as I keep getting older now that I'm 47, I really look at myself as a facilitator. I mean, I've lived long enough and I've been in this profession long enough I'm confident and I know what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of times it still comes down to the overall attitude of the student, the player, the team, on how much success that you have. Because if you're not willing to do the little things and accept roles and all those cliches, it's not going to work. But you have to give players, students, a template, right? I believe that we've shown a template in certain areas in our basketball program, and I think I do it in my classroom too, where if you choose to do things a certain way, you're probably going to be successful. And if you want to, I say it all the time to my colleagues, if you want to be a fake student, if you want to be a fake player, I'll see that. And the fake ones are usually the ones complaining that they're not getting playing time, or they're not getting an A, or not getting a B, or whatever grade they desire, instead of actually putting in the work to attain the success they actually want.
And that kind of goes on with the next question I have here. Is you've listed certain traits, but is there 3 traits that you think a good leader should have, or whether that be on the court or in life in general? Is there 3 traits that all good leaders, you believe, should strive to have?
The biggest one for me is being organized. Because I think if you're organized and you're not always scrambling around, I think people are more willing to fall in line. I mean, if you look like you know what you're doing, sometimes that's half the battle.
That helps.
If you're just randomly scrambling around, I think people see that and aren't willing to necessarily even believe in what you're trying to do. So I think organization is key. I like to think that, when you're in leadership positions, some people think you and some people lead this way, you're just kind of the focus of attention and you want all the glory. I try to stay as humble as I can. I don't like taking credit for anything, because I think it's the job of a coach or a teacher to just put your head down and grind away, and you have success, you move on. You have a failure, you move on, and you just keep adapting to that type of stuff. So staying humble with success and with failure, to just keep grinding, is something that I tend to like in leaders. It's not the only way to lead, though. There's all kinds of leadership styles, but I prefer to try to keep it low as much as you can in terms of the amount of light that's being shined on a coach. It's it still comes down to the players, in my opinion. Organization, stay humble. Well, I just kind of mentioned it. I do believe in just a grinding work ethic. That's what I learned from my dad, my uncles. It's what I've always been around. And actually, in my teaching environment down here in my little pod, I'm not with all the other math teachers. I'm with all the social studies teachers. We all kind of are like that down here. We all kind of just grind away. A lot of people, consider some of us down here to be grumpy and I don't know, maybe not happy or whatever, but I think all of us down here love students and like helping people learn. It's just we grind away. Your dad teaches next door. I think he's a similar mentality. Mr. Almdahl, Mr. Ressler, Mr. Thielen. We all do our jobs really well, in my opinion, and we're just straight shooters. Go about our business every day and grind away and just deal with what's kind of thrown at us and try to teach that to students as well.
So you'd say organization, modesty, hard work.
Yeah.
3 traits right there.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I mean, those are essential. If you want to, you can be the rah-rah sort of leader and you want to, have all the glory. History just had thousands of those.
Plenty of that, yep.
But there's also been thousands of others that are, like you said, put their head down, get the job done, and why get excited when you're just doing your job?
Correct.
But one thing, too, that I recognize with you mentioned all the teachers that work in this pod, they all happen to be coaches, too. Yep. So I wonder if the way they conduct themselves in the classroom influences them on the coaching field or vice versa or a little bit of both.
I think so. I think we all have the same mentality when we're in the classroom or when we're coaching our respective sports. I think that just goes hand in hand. I see all the personalities of all these guys down here, including myself, and I think we're the same way when we're coaching. It's just an extension. It's an extension of the classroom, in my opinion, which allows for consistency, right? It's not like I step out of here and all of a sudden I change and go out and coach and act differently. It's the same way in here in my classroom as it is when I'm on the basketball floor, and probably the same way when I go home and try to be a parent. Mm-hmm. My own kids don't like me at sometimes. And just like my players don't like me or parents of players don't like me, it's not that I don't care, but it's me knowing I'm doing what I think is best for people to learn when they're around me.
You talk about parents being involved. A wise man next door once said that the dream job for a coach is a coach of an orphanage. Would you happen to agree with that statement, or you find it's a delicate dance, but a dance worth dancing when it comes to dealing with parents? Because
I say it at every first meeting, or maybe I don't say it, but I think it in my head. Every day, somebody's gonna be upset with me. There's no way around it. Every practice that I have, every game that I have, there's going to be a player that's not happy. There's going to be a parent that's not happy. But again, I just rely on the fact that if I think I've gone about my business properly in preparing and making decisions based on factual evidence that I have from a daily basis, then if somebody wants to be critical of me, so be it. I'm okay with that. It's just like, we all sit around and watch our professional sports teams, and we're all critical of these professional coaches, and we act like we're smarter than they are. But darn well they're putting in their time and doing the work, so they're making a decision for some reason, right? And sometimes it's not what we perceive as the right decision, and I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make bad decisions. But I like to think even the bad decisions that I make were for a purpose. I made that decision for a reason, and sometimes you have to learn from them.
So the next question I have here is do you think leadership is a skill some are fortunate enough to be born with, or is it something that can be acquired and improved upon over time? And if the latter is true, how should one improve this acquired skill?
Oh man, that's a great question.
I don't even know how to answer that one because I think good leaders come from all angles. Some people are around it, so you probably learn those qualities a little bit easier if you're around somebody that's in a leadership position as you grow up. Like I was just around people that were naturally in charge of groups of people, or so I kind of saw those things. But I think it's a little bit of both. I think with anything, some people are born with some innate ability there. But at the same time, things that you choose to do in life probably help you become a better leader. If you put yourself in situations where you're seeing other people and how they lead, then you start to kind of create your own template on how you're going to do that. Like I think back to my high school experiences in a small school in Rush City. I was encouraged to be in speech. So I was in speech and did great speeches. Did I like it at the time? No. Did it help me in life? 100%. I stand up in front of people and talk for my job all the time. So that was a huge thing for me. I was encouraged to be in the all-school play. I was in the all-school play for 4 years. People never even know that about me. I was even the lead one year. So doing some acting when I was younger in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, being up in front of people, doing that type of stuff, has that helped me in my life? 100%. So that was people encouraging me to do things, probably knowing what my long-term plan was and them seeing things in me and helping me kind of create those qualities when I was younger to be put in situations where it would help me out later in life. So a lot of that is just taking advantage of what's out there for you. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think you have to have it a little bit innate ability to do it. But at the same time, it's something you have to work at.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to learn, read about it. I'm not the most well-read person, but I've watched people my entire life. So I think that's where I've gained my most experience in kind of how to develop my own leadership style.
Yeah, I would agree. It's like a little bit of nature, but definitely a little bit of nurture when it comes to that too.
Yep.
And both pay off if you, like you said, take advantage of the opportunities that hopefully are around you. If people have ample opportunities, they have the potential to be great leaders. But again, just because you have the opportunities doesn't mean it's going to be handed to you. You still got to put your head down and grind away at it.
Yep.
So the last question I have here is more of a fun one, I would say. Who is your all-time favorite basketball player, and who is your current favorite basketball player?
All-time favorite's Michael Jordan. That's just too easy. I grew up in the heyday of Michael Jordan. The Timberwolves didn't come around until 1989, so that's when I was 12 years old. So I immediately was a Timberwolves fan, but they were so new that back in the day, Bulls games were on all the time because the old Chicago TV station WGN, I think it was WGN, was broadcast in the Midwest, all over the Midwest, so you could see all the Bulls games. So he was my all-time favorite just because he was a competitor and he played both ends, played defense, played offense, and they were really successful. So you always had to latch on to a successful product, right? So
you'd call him the GOAT then?
Oh, yes.
Not even close?
No, don't even start these debates with LeBron and Jordan. He's just that's what I grew up with. So
I always say, the reason I think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, one, you got the Last Dance documentary. That changed my mind. I used to always think LeBron was the GOAT, but after watching that Last Dance documentary, I was like, Jordan's the GOAT. And another reason is Jordan would never walk up the court as a player. LeBron does that, I think, way too much. And that just kind of sums up the two when it comes to the way they play the game. Jordan is not saying LeBron isn't a great player or anything like that.
He's a great player.
But I don't think Jordan would ever walk up the court or stay back on defense and complain to the refs and not bust his butt down to the other end of the court to, play defense. So that's, at least for me, that's the small thing that sums up the difference between those two. But do you have a favorite current player when it comes to
I don't really have a favorite current player, like a professional player. I'd actually say, no, this would be sappy, but I'd say my favorite players are my own kids right now since they're playing. My daughter's in 8th grade, and she's not overly big yet or tall, but she's scrappy, and my wife and I have tried to instill them just being team players, and I love watching my kids when they pass the basketball. Somebody else gets a score. I think that's part of life, is learning how to become part of a team and doing the little things. So I think it's cool that I've been able to do stuff in the driveway with my kids growing up, and then you kind of see them do some of that stuff in games and things like that. That's kind of cool. And
it comes full circle, right?
It comes full circle, and that's I talk about the whole humble piece, and my kids aren't going to be the superstar 30-point players, but they're going to hopefully be part of a team and compete and learn things about life along the way. So I'd say my 3 kids are my favorite players at this point.
That's good of the answer as any right there. Well, we're coming up on an hour here, and I know you got a lot of work to get done for these basketball camps, so thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you the man, Mason.
Likewise. Thank you for listening to Youthful Perspectives. I hope this conversation has inspired nuanced ideas and provided advice that you can implement into your everyday life. For me, the most helpful takeaways include the 3 traits a successful leader should have: organization, modesty, and hard work. The basic belief that once you do their job, do it right, and do it ethically. And the fact that Coach Schlagel's quote-unquote high point in his coaching career wasn't a particular award or winning a state championship. Rather, it was knowing that a winning mentality has become the expectation and not the exception for a number of teams within the Albany boys basketball program. Successful coaches and seasons come and go, but by establishing a winning mentality that a team, community, or company can continue to buy into, will not only grow the successful reputation of the leader, more importantly, it will nurture the seeds of potential present within everyone who commits themselves to the larger goal, eventually blossoming into repeated success and milestones. At the end of the day, this final point seems to be the driving force in Coach Schlagel's leadership philosophy. The sweet fruits of success are best enjoyed with the ones you achieved it with. This is Mason Beerbaum, signing off.